we're talking about a paradigm shift, and the paradigm of modern medicine the paradigm that they work with doesn't include energy. So that's the challenge. There's an energetic component to our anatomy and also to our human experiences. And the idea of suppressed memory is really about suppressed energy. And the healing of that has everything to do with flow. It's that which is suppressed needs to get expressed. And when that happens, the body heals.
Let's turn our attention inward and explore the thoughts and emotions that shape our experiences and discover how to live with more awareness and intention. I'm David Dawson, and this is Interaction. All right. I am beyond excited tonight to have someone that has actually transformed our life, my wife and I's life, in so many ways that it's really hard to articulate. And we literally just met not too long ago, but I've known about Jonathan for several years now because we came across his work through Gaia and really resonated with us several years ago. But through the course of timing and serendipity, we finally ended up meeting with you, Jonathan, and I'm so happy to have you on and to be able to share with others the amazing gifts and knowledge that you have on helping individuals heal.
Oh, thank you, David. It's an honor to be here.
Absolutely. So, per usual with every guest, I like to start off with a blind contour drawing as a icebreaker for any nerves that we have at the beginning. And the rules are you have to look at the individual without looking at the paper, use your pen in a continuous line and until the very end. And then towards the end, you'll be able to see a very abstract form that is somewhat representation of the individual in front of you. And the fact that we're doing it on a Zoom or over, conference call and you're kind of grainy, this is going to be even more abstract than normal. So this is fantastic. So, awesome. All right, let's use the next 45 seconds or so. We'll go ahead and start. Okay. I hope I get your smile on there, Jonathan. That's what I'm hoping. Oh. So, okay. I'm going to start with the outline. Oh, and a trick here too is to draw larger than you think. I should have told you that beforehand because oftentimes if you draw pretty small, it can get a little jumbled, but we'll see what occurs. Are you looking at the paper? You can't look at the paper.
Oh, you can't look at the paper. Oh.
No, you can't look at the paper. Okay. But that's okay. You could keep going. This is good. This is part of the, we're not looking for perfection here.
And I can't lift the pen up, right?
Yep. That's the fun of it.
Okay. I think
done?
I need to stop before it gets too.
I really like this one. Oh my gosh. This has probably been my favorite one.
Oh gosh.
I don't know if you'll be able to see this one very well, but
oh my gosh. That's amazing. That is really amazing. You're actually good at it.
I have practice, but I enjoy to see what other people will draw of me. So let's go ahead and let's see what you did.
Yikes. This is amateur status.
I won't be offended. I'm trying to think what I look like. I kind of look like that, what's that Scream mask, where my eyes are like that, It
looks like a Halloween mask. I did a horror version of you.
Thank you. I won't take it personally, Jonathan.
Oh, good.
All right. Okay. So with every guest, I always like to start off too with the very first question, which is always the same. How would you describe your day-to-day relationship with yourself?
That's a powerful and potent question for me at this stage in my existence, because I'm at a place where I'm really clear that I'm not my body and I'm not my thoughts and my feelings, that this whole body is a vehicle that I inhabit energetically. And so I've cultivated a lot of awareness and observational awareness with this vehicle, this personality that also has been constructed over time. And so my relationship to it is one of humility and curiosity, mostly just observing it and appreciating it as creative, something that's been created and that will also have its moment of, disillusion. It'll dissolve at some point, it'll die, it'll come to an end. I laugh at myself a lot because there seems to be no way to escape being Jonathan and all of his quirks and tendencies and patterns. There's my relationship to Jonathan is one that's very much more honest and transparent than I've ever had in my life, where I see both the positives and the negatives without judgment. Just simply, these are some really great things that I bring to the table. And here's where I really struggle and really have some deficits. And it's okay. So that would be how I would sum it up.
Perfect. That was fantastic. Thank you for answering that. Okay, so I want to, dive into what I know you for, which is, you've personally helped my wife Chanel significantly this year, and so I want to just kind of start diving into the explanation of what you do. And so, in your book, Freedom from Body Memory, you do a great job on explaining what drove you towards your health. Could you kind of describe what events took place that took you to where you are today?
Yeah, the most significant one is at age 21, I developed a blood clotting disorder in my right leg. And blood clots are potentially life-threatening. And so the first episode of blood clots, the doctor said, "Hey, dude, it was a fluke. We don't know why it happened, and essentially, it should never happen again. You're good to go. Just it was an accident." And so 6 months later, I developed a whole bunch of blood clots in my right leg, and it was more permanent. So my leg swelled up, and I got pulled out of college, and I was left with these ideas of like, how do I move forward in my life with this life-threatening condition? And specifically, do I pursue the medical route to work with it and treat it, or do I take some chances and step outside that box? That was my big turning point, because modern medicine didn't offer me any real solutions. In fact, they said the prognosis was terrible, and that in another 10 years, my leg would become would need to be amputated because the swelling would deprive it of food and oxygen to my tissues. So it would become a need to remove the leg. And so, age 21, 22, I was sitting with that and entering my third year of college. And that's when I turned to alternative healing and began exploring all these possibilities that existed outside the medical paradigm. Wow. And that led me ultimately to body work and led me to the concept of body memory. And then that led me to receiving these kind of techniques that I practice today. And those techniques translated to the swelling in my leg going away completely, and essentially being transformed the whole condition. I've never had blood clots since, and I'm not on any medication, and there's no swelling. And it was kind of like an medically impossible transformation occurred as a result. So it's been a really great journey. That if I didn't have my own condition to work with, I wouldn't have quite the depth of conviction around what's possible with body memory and releasing body memory. By the way, that was a 15-year journey. It was not overnight. So there's all that goes with a long-term chronic condition, which is, the frustrations around it, you lose hope at different times. You're always feeling like you need to take a bigger risk in order to find out what can actually occur for you, if you can actually heal. And so the 15-year journey um, also brought about a lot of cultivation of different, I call, virtues that are necessary for healing: trust, faith, compassion, empathy, patience, persistence, courage. A lot of these qualities that might have been in their kind of like dormant, or even a baby infancy of development in me, had to be pushed to the forefront in order to overcome the challenges that I was up against. And yeah.
Yeah, in your book, I actually really appreciated that the first half of the book is really your 15-year long journey. And even before that, like the accident that caused the blood clotting initially from being hit at 5 years old by a car in that leg. And so something I really appreciated was the fact that this wasn't just some uh, get fixed quick, solution,
No,
and that it takes effort. And the fact that you spent so much of your time just dedicating to, understanding the body to heal yourself. And I think that crisis is just been such an important and potent aspect to how you show up to the people that you work with. And so, so your initial background is in physical therapy. That's kind of what you went to school for initially,
yeah.
and have a degree in and license in. But what drew you to myofascial release? Because that's a very big part of what you do.
Absolutely. So I'm out of physical therapy school. I'm working in a hospital, and one of my colleagues had just returned from a myofascial release course taught by John Barnes, and he was raving about it. But a lot of people, like our other PTs, weren't so interested. And I was absolutely fascinated. And he was sharing that, hey, the fascia is an untreated system in the body. And the fascinating thing about it is that it holds memory. And then when you release fascia, you get to release suppressed trauma, injuries, emotions, and that this is very healing to the body in a way that all of our PT skills that we learned in PT school, it kind of transcended the benefits of what we learned in school. So his enthusiasm, Ricardo Marchesani from South America, he was a foreign trained PT, and he inspired me. I went to a course, had my own experience, direct experience with the memory recall and the release process, and became absolutely captivated by it. I mean, literally, I went home and took all of my physical therapy books and manuals and just gave them away. I knew that I was not going to pursue a career as a PT in the way that I was trained. I was ready to devote myself to learning everything I could about body memory and the energy component to our anatomy, and and helping people to discover, like I was discovering, that they already have the capacity to self heal. And this was very much a cornerstone of my career shift from PT to kind of like alternative healing, because in the John Barnes myofascial release course, um, fascial restrictions are looked at as obstacles to energy flow in your body, and therefore obstacles to healing. By removing those obstacles, we don't heal a person, but that person becomes capable of healing themselves. They just need to get rid of the obstacles, restore the flow of energy through their body, and their body, by its design, begins to self heal.
Yeah, I've personally had some experiences with suppressed emotions and stuff in the past, where especially in my hamstring area, where all of a sudden I'll just start to tear up, or and I had, at the time, I was like, what is going on? Like, I have no idea why this is happening. And so now, years later, I definitely embrace it a lot more and, you know, believe in it, especially. So I want to actually go back to that first myofascial release experience that you had. And I want to just read a little excerpt from your book because I think it can describe some really interesting things that people might have a hard time wrapping their head around at
Yeah.
first. And so I just want to say this. It says, the instructor said to you, and the instructor is actually performing myofascial release on you in this part of the book. And it says, people suppress memories, stress, and toxic emotions in their energy field. I extended my energy field into your belly and like a magnet pulled out the remainder of the stress you were holding. So could you narrate that experience and what the outcome was of that?
So in these courses, you have a partner, you pair up, and then the instructor, John Barnes, would demonstrate a technique, and then we would practice it on each other. So a student was practicing a technique on me, and then suddenly, spontaneously, I felt this surge of emotion move through my belly and up and out in the form of tears. But there was this very intense abdominal activity, contraction, spasming that was coinciding with all this emotion. And so this assistant instructor came over and just kind of held me as she could see that the student was overwhelmed, like, oh shit, what's going on? I don't know what to do. And so she came over and just held me like a mother would a child. And when I felt her hold me, it allowed me to feel safe and go even deeper into the tears. When the tears were complete, that's when she began to bring her hand like towards my belly. The interesting thing is, I felt a sensation of her touching me, even though she physically was like 2 or 3 feet away from me. So she's moving through space, the space between us, and I could feel her energetically, like the sensation entering my belly. And then she just kind of grabbed on like this and pulled. Now, I don't know if I really mentioned this detail in the book, but my body literally scooted across the table like an inch as she pulled, suggesting that she was attaching herself to something, something invisible, something energetic, and my whole physical body responded. And that's why she explained it to me later, because she wanted me to understand what she was doing. And like yourself, David, this was my first body memory recall experience. And all of this happened at once. So it left me reeling, with tons of questions, lots of enthusiasm, and absolute like gratitude that I felt like I was like some great mystery was being revealed that was previously hidden. You know, like you're it's like you're going through, like a pyramid or something, and you discover some ancient treasure. I felt like something miraculous was being discovered, and that's what was motivating for me to want to learn everything I could about it.
Thank you for sharing that. I was thinking, just this came to my mind when you were talking right there. It is, do you find that more women are open to this than men?
Yes, not just to the paradigm. I think men are open to the paradigm of body memory, but women tend to be more available to the experience of body memory, especially the emotional component.
Why do you think that is?
I think culturally, men tend to be more guarded and protective of their feelings. I think in our culture, expression of emotion for men suggests weakness,
Hmm.
and so early in life, we're being modeled to be a man. What is it to be a man? And there's a few men that had different role models and were given more permission, not just verbally, but permission by, like, let's say their father or their uncles or their grandparents, like permission, like, we're expressing our emotions. It's okay for you to also. Also, I think men have a more of a challenge letting go of control. Um,
Mm,
and, men tend to be put into the trenches of intense experiences, whether it's intense athletics or intense work experiences where, you're kind of competition trying to move your way up the ladder and prove that you're worthy of a position or power. And so usually that comes with the cultivation of control. And to enter into the self healing state we're talking about, where memories that were suppressed get released, you have to let go of control. And I think making that transition for men have more of a difficult time because of that. And women have an easier time. I say easier, not easy, but easier time.
okay.
It's,
Yeah.
you know,
No, I definitely agree. I mean, the control thing I can relate with huge, and also, for me, growing up and being a very emotional person, but not wanting to show it because embarrassment or these stories I would tell myself that, wishing to be more masculine. And so if I show this side of myself, it is proof that I'm not masculine enough. And so putting up a lot of armor and, which, has definitely sabotaged me in many ways, as well as I've learned a lot now that I'm uncovering these old thought patterns and stories behind it all. So when it comes to BMR, so body memory recall, um, what does a typical BMR session look like for people that are unfamiliar with myofascial release? Because even before Chanel saw you, she would go see a practitioner here in Utah, and she had some great experiences, but nothing compared to what you offer. And so, could you kind of elaborate to paint a picture that's more accurate so people aren't creating some imaginary idea of what it is?
okay. Yeah, thank you. That's one of my favorite questions because I think I have created something unique that is an integration of many techniques, including myofascial release. But it's always hard to put that into words. Um, and I want to answer that question, but I want to really quickly acknowledge what you just said earlier about your struggles as a man being able to get to the place where you could honor your emotions and and integrate them into your experience of yourself. And I just want to say that I really appreciate that about you because, like yourself, I'm on that same path. And really what's happening, brother, is that the paradigm of what it is to be a man is being transformed.
Yeah, I believe that for sure.
It's a 2000 plus year paradigm of what men were defined to be, what they were expected to be, and it's ancient and it's also fragmented. The paradigm of the past about what a man is didn't include most of who he really is. It just isolated it to like certain qualities. Anything outside of that was not a man or not a worthy man. And we're on the forefront, I believe, of transforming that paradigm. And just as women are transforming the paradigm of what it is to be a woman. But we've got to get back to what's real and what's whole. We have to begin to realize we're a whole person. We're a human being first. Secondly, we're a man or a woman. And a human being is a composite of both male and female energies. And when you can embrace both and embrace your total nature, it's not only powerful, it's not only healing, it's not only transformative, but it's absolutely part of our path, whether we realize it or not. We are all being driven back to our original blueprint. that we departed because of conditioning, of what we've been told about who we are and what we really are. And the expectations and the social conditioning and the religious conditioning, and it goes on and on. The programming of who you've been programmed to be rather than who you really are. And that's the journey of body memory transformation, because most of our suffering comes as a result of being somebody we're not and not being who we really are. And it comes down to energy, and it comes down to whether that energy is being suppressed or it's being expressed. Is it loved and accepted and embraced, or is it judged, suppressed, and fearfully, removed from your everyday? So thank you for giving me that moment, because to me, that speaks to everything we're going to be talking about from here on out. Now, how do I do things maybe a little different? First of all, I would say that every practitioner, if we acknowledge them as a unique human being, which they are, they're going to do things uniquely different. You could take 10 myofascial release therapists, and hopefully, each of them is bringing something of themselves to the technique. And so part of what makes BMR unique is this unique being who's providing it. And one of the things that I will say about Jonathan that lends itself to the potency and power of BMR is that he isn't afraid of letting go of control. He's not afraid of emotion. He's not afraid of energy. And people pick up on that. They realize that I can support them to overcome their fear because I'm not afraid. In a very subtle way, we communicate non-verbally. And so when somebody is in your presence and they feel that you're afraid of the very thing you're asking them to do. So
that makes sense.
How can a myofascial release practitioner help somebody release anger or rage if they themselves also are afraid of it? If myofascial release is practiced in a way that's very physical and mechanical, like I'm just here to mechanically manipulate your fascia and release restrictions, and a person picks up on that, they know it's strictly a physical experience. And by the way, that's also helpful. It's not, I wouldn't devalue that at all. But the potential for myofascial release to go to the beneficial levels of emotional benefits and energetic benefits and even spiritual benefits requires that the practitioner do the same. They have to walk that talk. They have to have journeyed into those realms themselves, primarily to overcome the fear of it. And you don't have to be like knowledgeable about it. Like, it's not so much that you need to be an expert based on knowledge. I still look at the human body and our presence in it as a mystery. I'm still very curious. I don't feel like I have all the answers. However, I don't have as much fear. So I'm not saying I don't have any. I have a lot more enthusiasm and curiosity and trust in the journey to discover. And I'm adventurous that way. I've always been that way. And so people feel that, and because I've also taken 30 years of my life and dedicated it to that journey on a personal level, I kind of got an understanding of what this process is all about from having, traversed it. So it's kind of like if somebody asks you to go on a trip to Africa, you kind of hope that they've already been there and they've mapped it out and they have a map. I have a map of body memory. I have a map of the transformational process. I've seen it and experienced it. And even though each of our journeys through that transformational process is going to be unique, there's a general template that's consistent no matter who you are and no matter what your history is. You are still going to have to go through a certain general. You're going to have to get into your body, going to have to encounter your emotions. You're going to have to overcome the fear of them. You're going to have to learn to trust. You're going to have to open to embrace pain, but also pleasure. Like, we have to overcome all these fear barriers that are separating us from our total nature. And so, I very much understand fear. And even terror, because some other people who have these similar gifts have helped me. And then it became a lifestyle. And so once it's a lifestyle, it gets accelerated. Like, once you realize your personal relationships, your friends, your clients, they're all just teaching you and helping you to get in touch with your fears and helping you to overcome them. Like, it becomes an accelerated path. So I would say not only that, but also BMR incorporates a lot of techniques, not just myofascial release. So what I tell people is I work with the whole spectrum of touch, from off body to on body, from light touch to medium to deep tissue. And I even work with bone. I work with the chakras. I work with meridians. And I don't mean work with them in a mechanical way. I mean that I'm in touch. My sensitivities have been attuned to these anatomies in my body and in other people's bodies. So when I work with someone in any given moment, I'm tuning into their energetic anatomy and their physical anatomy and determining what's needed in that moment. If you only have one tool in your tool bag, then no matter, you just apply it and you don't really need to evaluate or tune into somebody because you just got one tool. If myofascial was my only tool, and at one time it was, that's what would happen. But through my own journey, I gained an appreciation and I learned from other teachers and a lot of people who awakened me to other energetic anatomy in the body and to tools to work with them. And then suddenly all those tools just kind of merged. And I don't even think of them as individual tools anymore. I show up and I'm present and I listen and I respond to what I connect to in a person. I just have a lot of skills to bring to the table and a lot of ways of interacting with people.
So how do you gain, I imagine that the amount of trust that someone has to have in your ability to relax deeply enough to allow for these things to surface, there has to be quite a bit of trust there on their half that you have your best interest in serving them. So what do you do to gain that trust?
You're absolutely right. Trust is the key. I tell people, I say, look, I can knock on the door, but I can't force it to open. And this healing process doesn't occur by force. It can only happen by invitation. So the techniques I use are invitations for people to go into their body, discover where they're in resistance or contraction or fear, suppression. And it's an invitation. And the invitation is coming energetically. Certainly it's verbally as well, but there's a transmission of energy between me and that person, and they feel it. They feel the encouragement without the force. They feel the love behind it, I hope. And the intention is just simply to help and support, but not to impose my agenda on them. All of this creates trust because, as you know, words alone without action and action without energy. Like if trust needs to be communicated all the way through. And I would say that even if I never spoke to my clients, I would hope that my presence alone would suggest that I have their best interest in mind if they could feel it, and sometimes in our shutdown state, we're in our heads, not in our bodies. So people are thinking about whether they're safe or not. They're probably going to come up with a lot of fear. But if they can drop down into their body, into their heart just for a moment, be in the present moment, I think they would find that someone like you or I are are have good intentions and loving intentions. So I feel like there's a very clear transmission that I've noticed my clients pick up on, and it hasn't always been that way.
Hmm.
Uh, so I think that over 30 years, my ego and my tendency to be in my head with people instead of in my in my heart and in being present with people, it's developed and it's cultivated. And so I get the opportunities to work with really, really beautiful people who've had really, really traumatic histories because they feel safe to do it. And I appreciate that as a reflection. It makes me think about all the hard work, all the going into the trenches of my own healing process. It not only paid off for me, but it gets to pay off now for somebody else because I get to be that safe, loving person for them to do their healing work.
So, what would you say to someone who's listening and uh, they might have the mentality of like, oh, this sounds neat, and they just kind of carry on, right? Like, could you articulate or express the importance of not holding on to these emotions in your body and what that can do long term or even short term?
It's such a great question and a point of reference because I had no idea, and I know most people don't have any idea the impact that suppressing painful emotions has not only on their body, but on their psyche, on their relationships, and the way that they move through life. You wouldn't necessarily be able to figure that out unless you begin to access those emotions, release them, and see the difference. We don't know any different. We've been suppressing emotion our whole life. It's a habit. We don't even know we're doing it. We've adapted to it. Life has become defined by that, you know, by the adaptation to suppressed emotion. And so all I can say is that it's fucking powerful, the influence of suppressed emotion. I cannot emphasize the power and potency of emotion suppressed in the body and how it disturbs the function of your organs, your nervous system, your muscular system, your fascial system. It's brutal. And because it's so invisible, it's not as tangible. Like you don't go to a doctor and they do an x-ray and they're like, we're seeing a lot of suppressed emotion here in this quadrant of your body. And I can see it's really, really having an impact on your low back pain. They're not going to see that. So it really requires an exploration on each person's part to discover for themselves by having the experience of a release, an emotional release. I mean, we've all got some version of that, right? If you do have a breakdown moment, even though it's totally uncomfortable, how many of us would admit that afterwards there's a sense of relief? You just calmer,
Totally.
more peaceful, right? We
Yeah.
feel a little bit lighter, even like more buoyant, like not as heavy. So think about those moments. Even think about like the release of even laughter or joy, like you just have a moment where it overcomes you and how you feel afterwards. Imagine that that's the tip of the iceberg. And imagine what it would be like to be liberated of some of those painful experiences from your past that you've been carrying around for years. And imagine that you aren't carrying them around anymore, that you're literally free of them. How would you feel? What would that be like? And I'm here to basically suggest that you're going to feel amazing. You're going to feel, I'll be very specific, more peaceful than you felt in a long time. You're going to breathe easier. You're going to feel more connected to your body because we move out of our body to escape our feelings and we go into our head. And you're also here's the one huge benefit. When you overcome the fear of feeling a past emotional experience that was painful, when you overcome that fear, that's the gift that keeps on giving. Because now, if other events, emotional events, show up in your life that are painful, you feel them. You've just to feel feelings rather than just suppress them, and you've gained confidence in your ability to do that. So fear now translates to confidence, and suppression converts to flow. And now you're no longer accumulating these tensions in your life because let's face it, you're a human being. Life has ups and downs. It has joyful moments and painful moments, and there's more to come. The only difference is how you are able to navigate them. Are you still afraid, therefore suppressing them, avoiding them, gaining more tension and more biological health problems as a result? Or are you now capable of just feeling them? So that's the key. We're spending a lot of time and energy trying to make our body feel better and put out these fires that suppressed emotion has created. It's created. I mean, just imagine, let's say that, like for me, I was hit by a car when I was 5 years old, 45 miles per hour. Boom. And so, yeah, it killed me. My mom resuscitated me. I'm back to life. And, a few months later, after being casted, I'm walking again. But I'm burdened now with the energy of that experience that translated into my body, and my body has tightened down and is holding it. Not that anybody knew that. And so imagine one of your experiences from childhood, and those of you listening, think about one of the most painful experiences of your life and imagine what it's like to internalize that and the burden of carrying that all the years that you've carried it. How has it affected you? And how desperately you try to feel better, through diet and exercise and massage and chiropractic and acupuncture and other healing modalities. And how much of that really is how your attempt to feel better, but still not feel that painful experience from your past. I work with lots of clients who say, I've done everything. I'm like, okay, tell me. And they'll list all these great techniques, great things. And I'm like, let me ask you, was any of those techniques designed to support you to discover consciously where in your body you're suppressing emotion and provided a safe space for you to release it? Chirp, chirp. They didn't have it. They've done everything except that. Let me just be honest. I know why that's the last thing on the list. It's scary. It's painful. Everybody hopes deep down, we're hoping we're going to be able to feel better, either physically or emotionally, or even in our relationship. We were going to succeed in life without having to feel that pain, those painful moments in our life. We're just hoping we can just kind of bypass them. And I think it's a very human thing to want to bypass them and to hope maybe you don't have to do that. And all I can say is if you've managed to do that, congratulations. My experience has been that there is no escape from the influence of suppressed emotion, it's always going to be there. You're either going to take it to your grave or you're going to summon the courage and the support to go in, feel the thing you're afraid of and let it go. And in the process, see, here's the magic, David. This is the magic. We begin to identify ourselves as these fearful people. I'm afraid. Okay, we do have that potential. We have that capacity to be afraid. But you know what? We also have an equal potential to be unafraid. And that's the magic. It's not just about feeling pain and letting it go. It's about being reminded that you can.
Yeah. That
It's about
possibility.
being reminded of who you really are. You're not a fearful person. We're inhabiting a vehicle that is conditioned with a lot of ideas and thoughts about ourselves that creates these kinds of fears about ourselves and insecurities. But when you go into a transformative state of letting go of control and feeling and letting all those feelings flow out of you, you start to access another part of your nature that you probably don't even know exists. And I call it the fearless part of your nature. I
Hmm.
call it who you really are. And we'll leave it a mystery. But I will tell you, there's qualities of this mystery person that you are. And the one quality is that they're not afraid. And another thing, it's very loving. Whatever, whoever this truth of who you are is, it's very loving, very compassionate, deeply accepting, trusting, wise. That's who you are. So what I say to people is, you're not your body and all the drama that you've gone through in this body. You're the energy that transforms it. You're that fundamental energy of love, light, wisdom, however you want to put words to it, but it's fearless. That energy is who you really are. And that's what you discover when you begin to enter into your body and open up and overcome these fears. Be afraid, but open up. And then suddenly you make the shift. You'll see it's an amazing transformation. It's really what I love about BMR. It's not, I don't fix people. I'm not into like, you know, having a resume of all the people I fix, so to speak. What I really love is when people wake up to the truth of who they are and they get empowered by it and inspired by it and gain confidence and they make that shift like, God, they like to give me the credit. Gee, Jonathan, I couldn't have done it without you. And I'll be like, you know what? I'll accept that. I did a great job supporting, but you still had to open the door. I
Yeah.
couldn't knock it down. And that's the beauty. They can't deny the fact that they ultimately made a choice to overcome fear. And that choice gains them confidence, but it gives them access to a part of their nature they didn't know was there. And that changes lives. That changes not just your body, it changes your life. It empowers you beyond a fix it technique.
Yeah, I've seen it. I mean, everything you're saying, for the longest time, I've always hoped to experience it in some way, and I know I experienced it on smaller scale, but, it wasn't until just some quick backstory without exposing too much private detail about my wife. But after having her son, who's 5 now, she started having really painful issues with her lower ribs because they weren't coming back together correctly after having our son Ames, and she was just in excruciating pain all the time, and I mean, to the point of weekly, being suicidal on a weekly basis, with just despair, and so just the amount of energy and resources that we were kind of throwing at just to try and figure things out and try to avoid surgery, was the biggest thing for us. We're like, let's try and turn over every rock before actually being cut open, because from her personal experience, hasn't ever seen surgery turn out very well. It always seems to have some sort of repercussion, and sometimes worse than the actual symptom that took them into surgery to begin with. And so, to then have, us do a Hail Mary, because we were on a wait list for her to look at a surgeon out in West Virginia for almost a year, just to get in for a consultation. And, we were just like, well, let's revisit, this body memory recall that we saw several years ago. I'll pick the book up, and I started reading it, and I'm like, man, this seems amazing. And just put a lot of trust in just being okay, like, let's have you, fly out to Maui and be there for a week and work with Jonathan and see what happens. Worst case scenario, we've turned over that rock, and now we still have an appointment for surgery. And I remember when Chanel had a call with you just to kind of maybe speed up some of the conversation that you guys are having through email. And, you don't know this, actually. I was actually sitting next to her. I had just had a break in my schedule, and I was just sitting there listening in, and you had us both in tears, just because the gentle nature and the ability that you have to just be like, you know what, I know I can help. I can't guarantee that I'm going to fix you, but I know I can help you. And just that reassurance was just so powerful for us. So, and then for her to go and be there for 7 days, and just to see the transformation she had, where when she's left, her ribs are in, she has more energy. She was doing 4-hour plus hikes while she was there. She could move her hips, which she couldn't do before. And just also the reality that you gave her. You said, you know what, when you go back to your home, expect for your pain to return in some way, but you now know that you have tools and the ability, that it's energy, and that you can begin to transform that energy and not let it define you. And sure enough, as she came home, that pain started to resurface, but through effort and persistence and commitment on her end, like, she is in significant better shape than she's ever been. She's trail running all the time now. It's crazy. It's so cute. I love it. I love how just active she is, and that she's coming home to herself really is what's happening. And she's just realizing more and more how distant she got away from and disconnected from who she actually was. And then she's coming home, and it's just really fun and beautiful to witness. And so I feel honored the fact that I can actually speak firsthand that, like, I've witnessed the power of something like this that usually I would just hear through Gaia or through books and be like, oh, maybe that, that happens, but to actually experience it in real life is just amazing. So thank you, Jonathan. I actually have a thought that I wanted to, let's see here, look over here. Oh, so actually to talk about what I mentioned about your ability to allow people to trust you in their healing and the gentleness that you perform. You in your book, you said, though my leg had never been treated before, it had never been treated with affection. And so how important is affection and this type of energy have in healing, not just through BMR, but just in general?
Yeah. So there's two ways that, well, let me put it this way. Maybe this is the best way to start. Pain and pleasure are both transmitted through the same channels in our body. So when you're resistant to pain, you also block pleasure. And so there's two ways to open. You can say, let's focus on the pain and connect with it and open to it. Or you can say, let's focus on something pleasurable and open to that. Because it's the same door, pleasure and pain. So when I learned myofascial release, it's a dry technique in terms of your hands are dry, no oil. You grip the fascia and you stretch it into barriers, and you hold patiently and wait for these releases to occur. And I did it just as I was told and taught for many years. And then um, I started to play with oil because there's the sensation of glide on the body is very nurturing. Being gripped and stretched isn't, I wouldn't necessarily say is nurturing. I mean, it's done in a very sensitive way, but
Yeah.
I find it to be more of a masculine, direct kind of approach where the glide and with oil is more nurturing. And so I began to combine the two, dry and oil work, to help people not just to access, to open doors within them, based on this feels good versus and just being painful,
Hmm.
So yeah, I think you have to, like, I can tell when my clients hit the wall with their pain. They're like, I appreciate, I need to feel it. I know that it's there, but I hit a wall. So then I switch gears, throw a little oil on, rub their feet, start to glide over the areas that are painful. And suddenly they start to melt again. They come into their body. They feel safe. There's joy. And then we come back to those painful areas. So it's, again, just being able to read your client and blend the two, really important.
Okay.
And the example you gave had to do with my girlfriend way back when, having an intimate moment with me and kissing my leg, the very leg that was hit by a car when I was 5. She kissed me right where my scar was, where I broke my femur. And so it elicited a very irritating response from me. I'm like, I don't like that. I mean, stop it. And she's like, how can you not like it? I'm kissing it. I'm kissing your leg. I'm like, she said, I think it's because that's where you got hit by a car. I think your protective response around that is still active. And I couldn't deny that that was the case. And so I told her, I said, give me 24 hours to prepare myself emotionally, psychologically. And then I'm going to have you kiss my leg again. And this time I'm not going to push back. I'm going to go into it. Holy shit, dude. A kiss, a loving kiss to a place that I had such a severe trauma, and opening to this person who loved me and this affection, and opening to that opened up the whole car accident. And so once again, it's through direct experience that I started learning, things you don't always learn in class or from a teacher. Your experiences start to teach you as well. And I've appreciated how loving affection can also help you to overcome your fear of feeling.
Thanks for sharing that.
Yeah.
So, what's your why in doing this?
I get it's so deep in my heart, like it reaches this very deep, deep place of fulfillment. I'm so happy to be of service in this way. BMR I created, so that means it actually authentically expresses like me totally. I get to bring all of me to the table when I do BMR. So it's deeply fulfilling. It satisfies my heart's desire to love, and it also puts me into the it helps me to appreciate the power of love ultimately, and the transformative power of love. And I live for that. I really do. I live for it. And at the same time, what a way to connect with people. I mean,
I bet.
to bond around that, because it's not one way. I'm not fixing or healing people. Whatever I'm offering, they have to receive and ultimately open up to their own power of they're opening their own heart to themselves. They have to make that shift between being afraid of their body and their feelings and their traumas to actually opening their own heart and bringing love to it. And so we're united. We unite as a team around bringing love to pain and darkness. And Well, it's just a great experience. It's a peak experience. So that's the why. It never gets old.
I bet. Yeah. I mean, it sounds such the fact that people are coming with such despair and they've tried. Seems like they've tried everything, and you're kind of this glimmer of hope, and then to actually be a conduit for them to begin to see that light of some breath of fresh air for them
Yeah.
is I can only imagine being so fulfilling on your part. So really quick, so if anybody that's listening, like what type of prep work do you prefer for potential clients before they come see you? Because, you know, it's always nice to at least have a framework of, what's their background so that they can maximize their time with you.
Yeah. Reading my book, Freedom from Body Memory, which is available on Amazon, really great way to start. Watching my free video series on my website called the Tripodi Paradigm really also adds a lot. And it's a way for me to connect with you. I'm sorry, way for you to connect with me. See, you see a face and a voice, but you
Mhm.
also go into a little bit of a deeper discussion than the book about body memory. And then lastly, I always appreciate the opportunity to consult with somebody, usually through Zoom, but also phone, to get a little connection going and hear a little bit of what people are challenged by and what they're hoping to maybe heal or transform through BMR. And it gives us an opportunity, like I did with Chanel, like your wife, to have that exchange. It's really important because, like I said, it's not what's being said, it's a transmission, it's an energetic experience. You need to know whether the client needs to know whether I'm somebody they can work with and, as you say, trust. And I also need to know if the client is somebody that I feel would benefit from BMR, because honestly, it's not it's not for everybody all the time. You have to be ready. You have to be in a certain state to enter into this level of healing. Some people aren't quite ready for that. They need preparation for it. And so I can identify that ahead of time and kind of steer them in the direction of how to prepare for BMR before actually receiving it. So those are the three main ways to prep.
Okay, perfect. So
Yeah.
then, my other thought too is how do we begin to? I know there's so much information out there now about that people are more open to than before, but how can we begin to start to reprogram our thought around healing? Because so much of our conditioning is I have an ailment, let's go to the physician. They will then treat this specific ailment with a prescription or whatever. And then it became, we're basically trying to smash out this signal, this message that is trying to tell us like, hey, something's off here. And rather than address it through a more holistic means, it's very common for people just to kind of want to address it and numb it out in some way and then carry on. So, in your opinion, like what are some ways to start to reprogram your thought process of how you treat the body?
Yeah. So I would say that there's some really good books out there and some really great authors. And it's important to kind of spend some time reading about your body, learning about it yourself, not relying on doctors to know everything about the body and putting yourself completely in their hands. Um, we're talking about a paradigm shift, and the paradigm of modern medicine that the paradigm that they work with doesn't include energy. So that's the challenge. There's an energetic component to our anatomy and also to our human experiences. And the idea of suppressed memory is really about suppressed energy. And the healing of that has everything to do with flow. It's that which is suppressed needs to get expressed. And when that happens, the body heals. And to get into to kind of learn about that paradigm, it does help to read some good books and read some science. You can read some spiritual texts. There are different fields of study, psychology, somatic psychology. They start to describe what I'm talking about, but in different terms. And when you come across it in the terms that reach you, you're like, oh, that makes perfect sense. The way Jonathan said it I didn't quite get it, but when I read it here, it really clicked. And
Sure.
vice versa. Some people say that when they read my book that the way I put it made it click. But you're really looking for a paradigm shift. And you need it because you didn't get it. You didn't get it in high school. You didn't get it in college. You didn't get it, in the world, so to speak. You didn't get it at the doctor's office. So it's up to you to take that journey and pull in the information that begins to describe the full nature or a bigger, more expansive picture of how your body functions that includes energy. Ultimately, pair that knowledge with experience, because you will be transformed by experience more than you will knowledge. It goes from knowledge to I know. It becomes a truth. When I had that experience of the woman reaching into my belly and pulling me, it instantly brought truth into my body. There was nothing made up about that. I had the experience. I was absolutely convinced there is energy. I know nothing about energy in the body, but I had the experience. I know it exists. So experience becomes important. I've seen a lot of people invest a lot of time and energy reading about and becoming very intellectually knowledgeable about healing. But in the absence of the experience, your experience will transform you. So, on that note, I offer experiential retreats in body memory. The one out in Sedona, it's a 4-day outdoor retreat. We go up into the mountains, into the energy vortexes as a group of people, and we put our hands on each other. I direct and guide people on how to do BMR in a very introductory way, and people start having direct experiences. And when you pair experience with knowledge, you really start having a paradigm shift, and it becomes really helpful. Eventually, all that will lead to you cultivating a lifestyle, what I call a transformational lifestyle. When I first got into transformation, it was an event. You go to a seminar, you go to a healer, and then after that, it's life as usual. Once you enter transformation as a lifestyle, that's where it gets great. Because guess what? If you look into nature, transformation's happening all the time. It's by nature, it's by design, it's supposed to happen. It's not an event, it's a continual process. And when you are in sync with that process, you're skyrocketing, you're thriving, you're empowered, you're alive. When you're in some resistance to it or a fear of it, then you're going against the whole nature of the universe. And there's consequences for that. Biologically, your body reacts to that. Pain and fatigue are a big part of that.
So, I mean, that was such a great answer. Thank you. If you could, if there's one thing that you hope that people can take away from this interview, what is it that you feel I mean, obviously they're probably going to take a lot away from this, but if there's this one thing that you feel like anyone that ever listens to what you do or what you're speaking of could at least help them in some way, what would that be?
You're not only capable of transformation, you are designed for it. You have the capacity by design to transform everything that ever happened to you, no matter how painful, no matter how scary, no matter how traumatic. You already are wired with this ability to transform. And if you can take that in and embrace it, then the only next step is to discover how to access that ability that you already have. But know that it's already by design. It's there, just waiting to be open to and allowed to to happen.
Perfect. Thank you, Jonathan.
Yeah.
So where is the best place for people to reach you or look you up, just so if they did like what they heard, they can contact you in some way?
Freedomfrombodymemory.com is my website. And that's the main way to get in touch and be in touch with retreat opportunities, free educational services that I'm offering. I'm also creating a YouTube channel right now, and it'll be just full of content. So that's the best place to go to. It's the hub.
Perfect. I love it. Fantastic. Well, Jonathan, thank you so much for spending time and chatting with me today. I always enjoy our conversations. They're fantastic, and I appreciate your energy.
I appreciate you too, David. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah, you're
Thank you
welcome.
very much.